Okay, welcome to Chapter 4, Hardware and Software. This chapter is a particularly good chapter if you are into the inside of computers. If you're not in the inside of computers, you may find this to be cumbersome, but I'll try to make it painless as possible. So let's just get into it. So what do you all need to know about hardware and software? Hopefully I'll tell you, again, many of you are in a business major and you need to know something about it, but I'll try to keep it as surface oriented as possible. The author asks, how can the hardware affect competitive strategies? Hopefully I'll point that out to you. What do you need to know about software? And then open source software, can it be a viable alternative? And I'll go through open source software like Linux. I'll go through that in detail and see what we can do to get this done. The brains of the computer is the CPU. CPU, you may have a big computer box that everything fits in, but the CPU itself is quite small. Trying to equate it in size, it's typically the CPU probably in your computer is only about a 1-inch square and only about 1/8 of an inch thick. So very small, very small. What does it contain? Well, quite a bit as we do this right now. But everything happens, and as I told you before in previous videos, the computer is nothing but a math machine. It adds and subtracts. It does everything is a derivative of that. And it basically just adds and subtracts instructions on what it gets. So everything is stored. You have non-volatile storage and you have volatile storage. Volatile would be when you're typing something and you haven't saved it and your power goes off, then it's gone. That's volatile. Otherwise, non-volatile, then you can save it to your hard disk drive or your thumb drive or your optical disk or something else, and that will keep it. And if you've ever lost data, you probably wish you had saved it before you got rid of everything, or before you turned your power off, or you had a power failure or something like that. I won't go through this and read this to you, but you can see the types of hardware. Server farm, these are conditioned, air-conditioned, temperature, humidity, optimally 68, 65 degrees, depending on what the manufacturer calls for. The ones I've been in are quite cold. Most people that work in these server farms wear a jacket. Binary, base 2, 0, 1, either on or off. And everything is a derivative of these, even base 8 octal or base 10 binary, which you're used to, or base 16 hexadecimal. Everything that we do derived from having a state of on and a state of off. So everything is simplicity right here. These are probably hard for you all to memorize. I've done this over the years. I know that kilo is 1,000, I know that mega is 1,000,000, I know that giga is 1,000,000,000. And then terabyte, petabyte, exabyte, and zettabyte. You may never have heard of these before. You've probably heard of terabyte though. Terabyte is 1,000 gigabyte. And you can see how they're abbreviated over here. Just helps you with some of the size and what we're looking at. I started this trek of mine a long time ago. Back when kilobyte was large. Back when bytes, we measured everything in bytes, and now that's often unheard of. We measure speed in hertz. When I started this, it was called cycles. It was changed over to hertz. And it used to be cycles per second, CPS, and now it's hertz. And same thing, yeah. Smart devices, you probably have a smartphone. It takes the place of many other devices that you would possibly use. New buzzword for today is the Internet of Things. and they disrupt organizations. Spend a little more time later talking about that, but any device that you have that uses the cloud for storage or for processing or anything else falls into the Internet of Things. 3D printing. This is a consistent case study throughout your book. I didn't spend any time with it. Talking to you about it, you can read it yourself to see if 3D printing is viable or not. You've seen commercials on it. There's a lot of different areas on internet of 3D printing that is used. Self-driving vehicles will be here one day. I don't know when. I doubt I'll be around to see it. All right, I mentioned this already. Self-driving cars by 2019. Well, we have them now. Are they viable? No. Will they be viable? I don't know. I don't see how. I mean, they can park and they can do this, but now when you start talking, look how many cars still exist that did not come with seatbelts. Seatbelts, as I recall, were mandatory in 1968. So anything prior to that does not have seatbelts. Now, there are still cars prior to 1968 on the road right now. So you do the math and think of when self-driving cars, 40 years from now, 50 years from now. Again, I don't plan to be here to see self-driving cars in their, when they get around. But conceptually, they make a lot of sense. Will they disrupt business? Absolutely. 3D printing, what can happen with this? Examples right now, is 3D printing viable and being used? Absolutely. Let's go back and look at this one, Nest home automation. I have quite a bit of home automation. I don't have Nest itself, but I use X15. It's old technology, very old, but it works fine. It keeps the lights coming on and off at a certain time, thermostats controlled and stuff like that. I can do that remotely using the older technology. There is new stuff out there. One day I may jump into that. Who knows? What do business professionals need to know about software? Well, you have two types, client and server. You can see what they are up here. We've talked about thin and thick net client already. Major operating systems, the majority of you all have one of two, either Windows or Mac. I don't know of anyone else that's using a Unix or Linux. There may be someone in the crowd that's using a Linux. I doubt anyone's using Unix unless you work at a company that uses it. Some of my students before have had Linux, but they've been typically technologists like myself that has used Linux. I've used Linux for years. I'm not good at it. I don't know a lot about it, just what I've learned enough about it to be able to load it and play with it a little bit. I don't use it for anything, but now it is widely used, especially in servers. Continuing on, most of you are either using iOS or Android. There probably are still some BlackBerry users out there. I doubt most of you all, unless you're non-traditional, which means you're a little older than a traditional college student, you may be using something else, Symbian or BlackBerry. I would say that the other 99% of you all, though, are using iOS or Android. I've used both. What do I like best? Whatever I have. I like they both do what they're supposed to do. Modern style interfacing, an idea, Linux virtual machine. This is what I use it for. And again, I just dabble in Linux. I don't. I'm more schooled in Windows and Mac OS. I do a fair amount of virtual machines. And I have in the past. I don't use it now. Again, I have it and play with it, but now that's not to say that it's not widely used. Virtual machine, virtual box, VMware are examples of virtual machines, and they're used to put something on a machine For instance, if I was working on trying to erase a virus, I may download the virus to a virtual machine. Uh, I don't care what it does to the machine, because when I'm done with it, I just click delete and the virtual machine goes away and the virus goes with it. So I think possibly the best known use of virtual machines that I can think of, outside of using it in ISPs and servers and stuff, I think if I was creating antivirus software, I think I would use a virtual machine to play with the viruses to see what would kill it and what wouldn't. I remember when virtual machine came out. Uh, I, I remember VMware, or actually there was something else I can't remember now, but it's been out for 20 plus years. And I remember that, of playing with those. Used to be a memory hog. Now they're down to the point of you can barely tell that it's running in the background. And again, you run this if you have a server software. You can actually run server software on your computers right now. You run into a virtual machine. Owning versus licensing. You're supposed to have a site license for everything that is not public domain on your computer. That's up to you whether you choose to do that or not. It's pretty hard not to do it today, though, because a lot of viable systems like Microsoft Office and everything else, they actually have a use code that's pretty sophisticated. It's kind of hard to crack. But you have a use code that makes you, when you log in, it actually goes out and checks to see if it's really you. What does this mean? Well, you take your hard drive out and you put it in somebody else's computer, and your software quits working. It will actually go in and look at the signature. Every computer has a signature, and it looks at the signature and it says, hey, this is not you anymore, and it quits working. Likewise, if you are using software and you backed up everything and you replace your hard drive, you may have to call and get permission to reuse that software. Does it take a long time? Absolutely not. Pretty easy to do, but it's a license. Applications. You can look at those three types right there. Firmware is not software, it's not hardware, it's not middleware. It is a operating system, a mini operating system, special software, the author calls it. I call it a mini OS or something, that will operate a mini application that is put on ROM. Now, read-only memory means that it's stored on your computer permanently into ROM chips, which means when I upgrade my firmware, it's a special device that has to, a special time that you have to do that. It's not like an update that you do for your computers right now. You know, you're supposed to update your viruses, your antivirus software. You're supposed to update your operating system. This is not the same. This would be if your printer or one of your devices stops working or does not work well with something, then you may need to update its firmware. It's usually a time of great caution. The author of the firmware update will tell you, make sure you do not have a power failure, otherwise you may brick something. When you brick something, then you've basically killed it and it's no longer in use. You can brick anything. I've bricked stuff before, playing. Can it be restored? Yeah, but it's kind of tough. So you want to be real careful when you're updating your firmware. Should you? Absolutely. Should you be careful? Absolutely. Open source versus a viable alternative. You can see LibreOffice, Firefox, and all the way down you can see these open source software programs. What good are they? Well, they're free. That's what good they are. They don't cost anything. What bad are they? Well, not everything talks to everything else. Not everything works like it should or like you would like it to. But it is good for experimenting and for getting stuff that are free. You can see open source. I'm not going to say anything else about this. You can read about this. I will say back to this slide, ethics guide, free apps for data. You know, I mentioned this. We've talked about ethics in every chapter now a little bit. I will say that if you use something, you ought to pay for it. It's just the human thing to do. Much like listening to music. Someone had to create that music. They earn their living by selling their music. And for one person to share that, that is infringing on something else. So to me, that's ethical, is to pay for what you use. If you have a program on your computer, I have no illegal programs, nor have I had any illegal programs in a long time. Did I used to download software for free? Absolutely. I think most people did. However, my conscience bothered me, and so now everything I have I pay for. I think that's just the right thing to do. Oh, let's see. Keeping up to speed. We mentioned the speed of computers and everything that is happening. In Moore's Law, every 18 months, the book says that you double the number of transistors, you double everything else that comes up. I don't know what to tell you to update. The computer I'm using right now, it has an i7 chip, which is still the latest chip. I typically, when I upgrade, I try to get the latest and greatest. Sometimes it's expensive, but yet now the computer I'm using is 5 years old, and it still works as good as the day that I got it. Nothing's really changed. I have it's an i7 chip, which is still the latest chip. It's not the newest chip, but it's the latest as far as the chip generations go. I have 8 gigs of RAM. I could probably upgrade it, but I don't use this for anything but schoolwork. I don't do a lot of video work on it. So I don't know when to tell you to keep up to speed. When do you upgrade? When do you do that? Now I do have solid state drives on all my computers. The ones that I use, I have solid state drives. I've lost data before on mechanical drives, and so I've just upgraded that. But now when I upgrade this, another i chip will come out, either an i7 or something else will come out. And it may be already out. I haven't looked at it lately. But when I do upgrade this computer, I will likely go ahead and bite the bullet. Now, what does biting the bullet cost? I'll pay another $500 just for the increase in CPU. It's really that expensive when it's new. But that will keep me going another 5 or 6 years. And so that's just what I do. You do what you have to. I read technology every day. I read something technical every day, and I've always told those that decide to get into a technology field better be prepared to read something every day. So how does the knowledge in this chapter work? Well, it helps you. Hopefully what I've talked about would get you a little more in hardware, software. You would understand this. And again, you may be a finance, accounting, economics major, but you need to understand what your employees are using, what your coworkers are using, and what you should do. Hopefully you understand a little more about open source software. It's not always viable, it's not always well used and everything. We have covered all of these competitive strategies. Time is money. I didn't mention that before, but I'll mention it now. Time is money. And so when I'm doing videos like the one I'm doing right now, it takes a certain speed computer to render this video into something that's usable. Rendering means convert. If I do videos over a couple of 3 days, I could literally take 3 or 4 weeks to render all the videos on a slow computer. I don't have that kind of time. Therefore, I have a faster computer with more memory. But there's also something called the law of diminishing returns. You need to make sure that you need what you're getting. They have probably a 2 or 3 terabyte solid state drive out. That's $3,000 or $4,000. I don't need something like that. I'm well past the law of diminishing returns. I need something that works quick now, so I chose solid state because it's reliable and it's also fast. But I have a small solid state drive, and then all the stuff that I'm going to store, I store virtually on a system someplace, or I store it local to some mechanical hard drives that if they break, it's not a big deal. So that's what you need to know. That's all I have. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Good day.